Hello and welcome to the third episode of Watercolor Wednesdays. So last time I mentioned how I was going to talk about detail, and the thing with watercolor is that with detail I found that you've got to slowly and gradually build it up, rather than in other paintings where you can select the details or select the bits that you want to focus on. You've got to work with the paint much more holistically and save the finishing touches that really make the piece until the end. And I found with the watercolors it really makes a difference, going from background to foreground and from light to dark, because once you've put the darks in, it's very, very difficult to get the lights in back over the top. So even with a painting that's like this one, it's not a landscape, so how you go from background to foreground isn't quite as obvious, but I found that it works to try to see through the different layers of colours and treat the ones that are sort of lying underneath the detail layers as background colours. So instead of doing something like if it was a landscape starting with like the sky or mountains in the background, I tend to just analyse in terms of colour and the shape of colour. So the lighter colours where you don't need the shape to be as precise, I tend to class those as more like background colours. And then the ones where you need them to take a precise shape, or you need something like a strong level of contrast or detail, I class those as foreground. Last time I talked about the importance of selecting a variety of colours that lie underneath. So I guess for how I'm doing it this episode, those would be my background colours. You can call them background colours or underlying colours or underlayers. It really doesn't make that much of a difference because it all essentially means the same thing. So for this fish, that would be the pale blue and then the bits of purple in there as well. And having lots of layers that slowly build up the colours so they're more vibrant and there's a higher level of contrast, that gives the illusion of there being more depth and detail to it as well. So after building up shadow areas, maybe going in other colours or just darker values, adding more blocks of colour, and then keeping the really, really sharp contrast segments and little bits of detail until the end. In order to do this, it's pretty essential to let the other layers dry first so you can work over the top without it disturbing too much what you've already done, and to avoid the paint bleeding where you want sharp lines or shapes. And I also find that it makes it a lot easier to think about, to say, right, on this layer I'm going to do X, Y, Z, rather than trying to blend everything all at once. So it's quite difficult to predict what the final result will look like, because the process of building it up is so gradual. But having the realisation that I can't just go in all at once and do as much detail as I like in one place, or hone in on just one area at a time, that's really made the difference for me. It's not like acrylic or oils where you can just focus in on one bit at a time. For example, if I was using other paints, I probably would have started off doing the eye and then trying to build up the shape around there and going in with as much detail as possible, or just starting out with something like the stripes. But yeah, this fish overall was a little different to the previous ones because the colour palette was very limited to basically all hues between blue and purple. And the fish had quite a lot of unique features, like all the little dots in it that I'm not sure whether they're scarrings or features of that particular fish. And it had quite an unusual mouth as well. It's more of a beak than a mouth. And the position of the fish isn't side-on like the others were, so there's a bit more foreshortening going on. It's not quite a 3/4 because you can't see the bit of the other eye, but it's definitely not a profile view. Kind of feel like maybe the darker bits in this painting could have been a little darker, but I'm still getting the hang of mixing watercolours, and I was struggling getting the blue to go any darker without having to introduce other colours, and I've been encouraged out of the habit of mixing in with black. So maybe colour mixing with watercolours is something I'll need to look more into, because I definitely wanted a very pure, vivid dark blue. And if I mixed in like the complementary, so that would be orange, then it tends to go more of a muddy shade of blue, which isn't quite what I was looking for. If I mixed in the complementary, it'd probably end up closer to brown than closer to a bluey black, which is what I really wanted. So maybe I'm going to have to learn when it's okay to use black to mix in. I don't know, the underside just looks like it needs to be darker to me, but maybe I'm being a bit of a perfectionist about it. I've realised a thing I haven't talked about is what reference images I'm using, so I will discuss that in the next episode. Not entirely sure what else I'll be discussing along with that, but I'm sure I'll think of something. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it, and see you guys next time. Bye!